Although the prison systems have been going on for centuries, there is still a debate on which rights prisoners should and should not have. Prisoners were once a part of this society and, in most cases, will be out in the world again. Taking away some of their rights in prison will only make it harder to transition back into the real world once they are released. Prisoners and inmates should have the right to vote, the right to good health care, and their First Amendment rights while in prison. Felons should be permitted to vote while in prison. Mandeep Dhami, PhD lecturer in criminology at the University of Cambridge Institute of Criminology, stated in her December 2005 article, Prisoner Disenfranchisement Policy, A Threat to Democracy, published in the Analysis of Social Issues and Public Policy. She said, the argument that allowing prisoners to vote would be costly and impractical is ethically unjustifiable. Similarly, the fact that prisoners lose many freedoms does not imply they should lose all their civil rights. Allowing prisoners to vote, by contrast, may strengthen their social ties and commitment to the common good, thus promoting legally responsible participation in civil society. Also, Jeff Manza, PhD professor of sociology and political science at the Institute for Policy Research at Northwestern University, and Christopher Eugen, PhD, distinguished McKnight professor of sociology at the University of Minnesota, stated in their 2006 book, Locked Out, Felon Disenfranchisement in American Democracy, said, prisoner administrators have a responsibility to maintain a safe and orderly environment in prison, and they have a great discretion in determining which individual deprivations are necessary to meet these goals. But a series of court rulings has established that restrictions on fundamental rights must be justified, rather than imposed arbitrarily on inmates. Where rights such as access to the courts or to free expression are not clearly part of the punishment or necessary for prison administration, they are generally retained by inmates because voting presents few security concerns and could be facilitated by either absentee ballots or polling places inside prisons. The question of restoring voting rights to inmates becomes a matter of choice, not necessity. From there, it's not a leap to suggest that the same logic in favor of voting rights for ex-felons and non-incarcerated felons might be extended to current inmates as well. Allowing voting provides a costless way of allowing them to practice citizenship. Also, Waverly Jones, the son of a murdered police officer, stated the following in a June 24, 2005 article by Michelle Chen titled Felon Voting Rights, Conflict Hits Federal Court, published in the New Standard. He said, voting is not a privilege. It is a fundamental right in any society that desires to serve the interests of its people. And to take it away because you've committed a crime is unjust. It will allow them to organize themselves in prison to vote what is in their best interest. And I think that this will improve the quality of participation in this type of electoral system. For example, if we put in ballots in prisons for the elections, the prisoners will still be able to show their citizenship even though they are locked up. Now let's talk a little bit about health care that's inside of prisons. Felons should have the right to good health care. The 2.3 million Americans currently being held in correctional facilities across the country suffer a much higher rate of a serious or chronic illness than the general population does. Health Day reporter Amanda Gardner stated, of these roughly 2 million inmates, about 800,000 suffered from a chronic condition that generally requires medical attention, like diabetes, hypertension, a prior heart attack, or a previously diagnosed cancer, among a few other diagnoses. Dr. Andrew P. Wilper, an instructor in medicine at the University of Washington School of Medicine, said, compared to non-incarcerated citizens, inmates in state jails were 31% more likely to have asthma, 55% more prone to have diabetes, and 90% more likely to have suffered a heart attack. 38.5% of inmates in federal jails, 42.8% of inmates in state jails, and 38.7% of inmates in local jails, respectively, had a chronic medical condition. Among inmates with mental conditions that had been treated on the outside, 69.1% of federal prison inmates, 68.6% of those in state facilities, and 45.5% of those in local jails were not taking their medication at the time of their arrest. The treatment rate for mental health woes tripled after incarceration. 14% of those in federal prisons, 20% of those in state prison, and 68.4% of those in local jails had not yet seen a healthcare provider since their incarceration. Despite persistent health problems, the report found there's some alarming data that suggests that those inmates with chronic conditions don't get the care they need when incarcerated, and that's Eighth Amendment illegal. Given the huge cost of incarceration, we're foolish not to ensure that inmates get the basic care that would allow them to have a better chance of rehabilitation. This suggests the need for universal access to health care. In 2011-2012, an estimated 40% of state and federal prisoners and jail inmates reported having a current chronic medical condition, while about half reported ever having a chronic medical condition. 21% of prisoners and 14% of jail inmates reported ever having tuberculosis, hepatitis B or C, or other STDs. Both prisoners and jail inmates were more likely than the general population to report ever having a chronic condition or infectious disease. The same finding held true for each specific condition or infectious disease. Among prisoners and jail inmates, females were more likely than males to have ever reported a chronic condition. For example, high blood pressure was the most common chronic condition reported by prisoners, 30%, and jail inmates, 26%. Overall, there should be an increase in funding to federal, state, and local prisons to make their health care better and more reliable. Having better health care for prisoners and inmates means they will be healthier when they're released, which will help them in the long run. Now let's talk about the First Amendment rights that prisoners have. Prisoners should have all First Amendment rights. Prisoners' rights cases concerning religion are about religious practices, not religious beliefs. Some practice heard by courts, including wearing jewelry, wearing hair a certain way, refusing to take a shower in front of others, demanding the prison to allow a sweat lodge to be built, wearing head coverings, demanding the prison provide a pork-free diet, and demanding the space and time for religious ceremonies. Documents for restricting religious practices in prisons usually involve security. If the government makes a good case that the practice interferes with the security of the institution, then the courts always decide in their favor. The First Amendment also protects an individual's right of speech. For prisoners, the argument typically surrounds with censorship of incoming and outgoing mail and publications. The prisoner's right to receive mail and publications is balanced against the prisoner's right to protect safety and security. For example, one issue concerning the First Amendment and prison regulations includes access to the media. Courts typically have upheld inmates' right to contact the media through letters, although they have rejected the media's right to interview or visit inmates. Courts have ruled that the media has no greater right of access to prisons or jails than the general public. It seems like they are trying to hide something from the public inside of the jails and prisons because of the lack of access that they get. Prisoners and inmates should have the right to vote, the right to good health care, and their First Amendment rights while in prison. Having these rights will help the prisoners with a smoother transition to the real world when they are released. Our prison system needs to help inmates prepare themselves and help get them ready to go back into the real world. And that starts with their basic rights. Thank you.